Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this select board meeting to order. And for all those who can, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. And Mr. Esco, will you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And moving to roll call. Brittany is not here at the moment, so I'll go ahead and take the lead on roll call. Mr. Strout.
Here.
Mr. Bishop.
Here.
Mr. Esco.
Here.
Mr. Boyle.
Here.
Town Manager Hutchinson.
Here.
And Chairman Miller here. For the minutes of June 7th and June 21st, they did not make our packets, so I'd like to have a motion to move those to our next meeting in August.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Public address to the board. This is a time when the public may address the board on any item listed on the meeting agenda or any issue or matter of the town. If you intend on addressing the board at this time, we ask that you do the following. Please identify yourself by name, address, or the company institution you represent. The public address to the board segment will last no longer than 30 minutes. Please make your comments concise and try not to repeat statements made by others. Please address your comments to the board chair. Discussion or debate on any issue may not take place at this time. The chair or the designee may answer questions on procedural matters. Please be cordial and respectful of others. If anyone wishes to be recognized when the board discusses an agenda item, please make that request at this time. The board chair may grant this request. Address comments to the board chair and be concise. Anyone from the audience? Rich? Mr. Hall.
Rich Cole, 164 Greenridge Drive. One quick thing, Greenridge Drive still doesn't have a sign at the bottom of Dalton Vision. I think it's been over a year that it's been missing, so maybe we can have our street name back. At least we know which street we live on. Anyway, hopefully I can be recognised for number 8 and number 9.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none? Number 6 for the appointments. Mr. Hutchinson.
I am very pleased to present you with Brandon Knish, who is my candidate for interim highway superintendent. As you know, the current highway superintendent has resigned. His last day will be Friday, and we need someone to take the reins. Brandon is the foreman there now, and has agreed to step up and take the position and the responsibilities and duties of the highway and cemetery superintendent and sewer superintendent and tree warden. So it's quite a job, and we very much appreciate your willingness to serve in that capacity.
Motion?
Sure. I make a motion, we appoint Brandon Knish as the interim highway superintendent.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Brandon, thank you for taking on that interim role. Any comments from yourself? Anything we can do to help you out, or anything else of that nature? Just let us know. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hutchinson, appointments?
Yes, we do not have appointments for interim burial agent or burial agent. I do. I'm sorry?
The burial agent is Deb Mary.
Yep.
Yes. I have an interesting note from the Board of Health agent. The role of a burial agent falls under the jurisdiction of the Board of Health, which, as is typical for most towns, granted the authority to the town clerk, I believe in 2014 or earlier. So yes, the burial agent is, in fact, our town clerk, Deb Mary, and as Brittany said, and I am pleased to know that that's the case in Dalton.
Great. And the highway superintendent, you're in the process of contract review.
Yes, and It's my understanding now that the board usually goes into executive session to discuss those contracts. It's different from the usual kind of employment offer. And I'm hoping that the board can, I'm sorry I didn't get the executive session on tonight's agenda so that we could move forward with that. I would suggest that perhaps the board can meet for a very brief session later in the week, and perhaps earlier in the evening, so that I can explain the process as it has happened and the results that we've reached now.
Should we approve pending that meeting?
That would be helpful, thank you.
Would there be a motion to do so?
I make a motion to appoint Bud Hall as our new highway superintendent pending contract review.
Is there a second on that motion?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Any abstentions? Motion carries. And Thursday evenings, we'll discuss that at the end of the meeting time for that meeting for Thursday, if we can't make it.
Yeah,
Okay.
you could
Set it now.
Want to set it now?
set a
Yeah,
time,
set a time.
Perhaps.
Okay. Is there a time that you have in mind?
I was thinking perhaps 5 or 6 o'clock, if that wasn't too early for some.
5 would be fine.
5 would do work for me.
I would work for
It should
me.
be real quick.
Andrew, after
6 or later.
I could do 6.
I'll do 6, yeah.
Ms. Boyle? Yeah. How about 6 o'clock on Thursday?
6 o'clock on Thursday.
Okay. And that gives us time to post that for Thursday, and
Yes.
It's going to be in person or Zoom? Did you say Zoom?
I didn't say Zoom.
In person?
I'm sorry?
In person here?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Is that all for the appointments?
That is everything.
Okay. Number 7, the health agent update. I don't see Jane here yet.
And unfortunately, our health agent is unable to attend tonight's select board meeting due to conflicting meetings in South County.
Okay.
She was here for a 4:30 meeting with the Board of Health and then left for, I believe, Egremont and Sheffield for meetings later on this evening.
That got postponed to the 19th. Board of Health.
I'm sorry?
The Board of Health meeting today
Oh,
actually got postponed to the
It
19th,
was postponed, but,
so I wasn't on
but-
today.
yeah, thank you. But she did have the meetings in South County.
Oh, yeah.
So, she has a couple of updates, solid waste and housing, and then a couple of comments on items later in the agenda. In solid waste, she says we're making progress on 2 parallel tracks to enhance the ability of recycling services for all residents in the town of Dalton. Both tracks help move toward more quality and quantity of recycling. For Pittsfield EcoPower next steps, Pittsfield is working on a revised contract with the Community EcoPower Plant, and we are working on a contract between Dalton and Pittsfield. The Board of Health will be setting tipping fees for private haulers at their meeting next Monday. And the board is expected to be revising hauler regulations to remove provisions such as the requirement for bundled prices and penalties and regroup, now that we no longer have to have those provisions as part of the DEP grant. The goal is to have the infrastructure and contracts in place for haulers to be able to tip in August. And this is meant to be a stopgap measure until we sort out the transfer station retrofit. For the transfer station retrofit next steps, the current transfer station contract with Casella has provisions for acceptance of recycling. The cost of recycling tipped at the MRF has gone down, and actually the towns are once again being paid for recycling.
Yes.
Excellent news.
Yep, good news.
And the Board of Health is meeting with Casella she's meeting with Casella with town representatives in 2 weeks at the transfer station to discuss logistics of exercising the option to open the transfer station to the private haulers to tip recycling. So that's going to increase the functionality of our own transfer station, make us less dependent on Pittsfield and more self-reliant going forward at a time when people are actually paying for recycled goods, so we're hoping for the best in that situation. She has an additional update on housing. There's been a post-COVID flurry of housing and nuisance complaints coming into the Board of Health, some of which represent a major threat to the health and safety of the resident, the neighborhood, and the first responders. She's in the process of identifying and prioritizing complaints and trying to figure out how to match the capacity of the Board of Health with available resources. The important thing to remember is that we are working on these complaints, but they do take time, and they ask people to remain patient for a bit longer. And that's it for that part of the Board of Health update. Again, there are a couple of comments for items later on.
Okay. Any questions at all?
No.
What kind of complaints are you talking about?
There are complaints about unsafe living conditions. Some of them coming from first responders going to houses which they find unsafe.
I understand.
And some coming from other residents who are living in housing that they do not own, that they are finding unsafe.
Thank you for that update. That was helpful, and thank you to Jane for the great work she and the Board of Health are doing on these matters. So, good work. Number 8, the municipality statement of commitment for BRPC Public Health Alliance.
And again, she has a note on this. You should have received that letter of commitment as part of your packets. Dalton was part of a State Action for Public Health Excellence, or SAFE, grant through the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission. It's a $300,000 multi-year grant that will be used to hire a full-time public health nurse and build their inspectional and organizational capacity, BRPC. The grant was applied for on behalf of all the Berkshire Public Health Alliance towns, which Dalton is part of, and is also relevant for Dalton given we use the BPHA for our public health nurse. This form needs to be signed off by both the Board of Health Chair and the Select Board Chair, and Dan Doyle has already signed off for the Board of Health. Our health agent recommends that the Select Board sign this letter of commitment, which says that Dalton will be supportive of the grant activities and won't use the grant to supplant other funding, which we would not.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Sure, I make a motion, we accept the BC BOA municipal grant program for shared services.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in... Yep.
Richard, did you want to speak on this? This was
Oh, yes, thank you, Mark, yeah.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Okay,
I didn't get a paper copy, but I have it in my email here, so I'm good.
okay. Any other discussion? Okay, motion and second and discussion. Any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. And I'll go ahead and sign that at the end of the meeting, Tom?
Yeah, sure.
Number 9, discussion. Proposed Dalton Town Green Infrastructure Plan. And Mr. Hutchinson.
We have Courtney Morehouse from the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission here to give a presentation on the green infrastructure plan for Dalton, which is meant to provide nature-friendly solutions to some of the flooding problems that we have, especially in town, and perhaps other purposes as well.
And Mr. Hall, do you want to comment before the presentation, during, or after? All the above. Okay.
Yeah, so this was presented at the last select board meeting, but since it's actually been published and it's open for public comment and feedback, I thought I'd come back again and sort of give the spiel. So this is a study that Berkshire Regional Planning Commission did to look at different areas in town-owned property that could be possible sites for what we call green infrastructure best management practices. So these include things like bioswales, whether grassy or vegetated, planter boxes, bioretention basins, anything where you can capture some of the storm water, hold it back, retain it, let it infiltrate before it ends up into the storm sewer system. So the idea is that you have two big functions with green infrastructure. The first is to really do water quality improvements. So as it captures stormwater, less of that stormwater is going directly into streams and rivers and getting actually treated by soils. And then the other is that it can actually capture some of the stormwater and hold it back so that you reduce flooding in certain areas. So the purpose of the study was originally just to encompass Walker Brook, but since we sort of had engineering consultants on hand, we sort of expanded it to other areas, looked at some of the areas such as Craneville Elementary and Green Ridge Park. I think we looked at about 22 areas total, and about 12 of those were put into what we call pre-conceptual design phase. In other words, our engineering consultant said, here's what we think is possible at these areas. Nothing confirmed or firm, it was just, here's some ideas. And then from there, with conversations in Tom and Dan, we sort of selected 3 sort of top priority areas. The plan's really there to serve Dalton, so we are really looking for feedback to either cut sections out that don't work or add sections in that do, add bits of information that would actually create a plan that's, you know, working for the town of Dalton. I will also say that the plan does fulfill some of the requirements since Dalton is what we call an MS4 community under the Clean Water Act. And in this coming year, MS4 requirements are going to have you identify 5 town-owned sites that are, you know, potential green infrastructure sites. So by doing this, you've already done that, right? You've already sort of fulfilled that requirement and started your way on some of the other requirements that are coming up in the next year that the state requires you to fulfill. So I mean, that's basically it. I think we're hoping that people can review sections of the plan, anything that's interesting. Hopefully the plan is set up in a way that you can jump to the sections that are relevant or interesting to you, and you don't have to read through all 92 pages, and give us feedback and ask questions.
Great. Any questions? I have a couple, but
Our 3-member Green Committee, I'd like to meet with them and see what their thoughts are. Wendy sent me something today, but I haven't had a chance really to.
yeah, her thoughts were very good. Yeah.
Yeah, her thoughts were
And Courtney,
pretty
you were
good.
on that email.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Did you get them?
I thought they were good, yeah. So
Okay.
2 of the questions were, do the town own those 2 plots of land? And I believe all that we looked at were town-owned plots of land. That being said, that section she was referring to was sort of the pre-conceptual design, so it was more of those, you know, something could be put here, but we quickly sort of ruled it out because it did seem sort of in a neighborhood, and it felt like those were people's backyards, and so less, you know, less optimal to actually putting something in should they upset, you know, the neighbors around there. And then, you know, I don't know what the appropriate way to respond to her is to clarify some of the questions she had in that email.
I would
but-
contact her directly if you don't
Okay,
mind.
great.
Yeah, reach out individually, and I'll hold for any other questions. Mark?
I'll just note that the plan is linked on the town website, but you do have to access it through Dropbox. So if you don't have the Dropbox app, you need to install that before you can see the plan.
Yeah, Dropbox is very easy to use. It walks you right through the process, so that should not be a problem. But if anybody does have a problem, let me know. I'll help you through it. So, Dan, any questions?
No questions.
Mr. Bull? No? Well, I guess 2 questions. Have you received any other questions besides Wendy Brown at the moment? I know we put it on our website. And the second part of that question, are you tracking those and that we can look at, kind of like the broad scope of questions that came in?
Yeah.
And the answers, so kind of like the documentation of that.
Yeah, so I'm keeping an Excel
Yep.
sheet and just sort of documenting all the questions that come in. So far, it's only Wendy.
Okay, all right.
And any feedback as well from, you know, any of the chain that I can put in there. It's sort of keeping that. And if nothing substantial is asked for edits, in terms of edits to the plan, I think I'll probably just attach that as another appendix to the plan presented to you for adoption in the next select board.
And that was one of the questions that came up, that you wanted us to adopt it today, but we said, well, let's hold off for a minute, because
Yeah,
it's just
that's
kind of
fine.
relatively new. We have some changes to our new town planner in place, and to give the community a little bit more. So looking at an August agenda item to
That's totally
gather,
fine.
is there any other timeline we should be aware of, or is that
It was just a
okay?
grant deadline for July 12th. The grant expired. The grant closed out in June 30th, and so we were sort of trying to turn it around so that we could show the grantor that we were working towards it. But I think we can make just as easy an argument to say we're sort of working towards that, and it's really, again, it's there for your all's use, so
Sure.
it should fit your all's timeline.
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you. Mr. Hall?
Yeah, hi. So apologies, I was on vacation last week, so I only got to quickly look at it today. But it looks well written. But the couple of things I wanted to ask was, as it's about stormwater, has there been any conversation or recommendation from the stormwater committee on the plan? Just
Good point.
Mr. Hutchinson?
They have just begun to meet again after a long period of not meeting, and have some NPDES business to get through as a high priority. So I don't believe that was on their agenda. Courtney, did you attend that meeting?
I did, yeah, and we have been emailing with the Stormwater Commission. They haven't, I don't think, had a chance to look at the plan because they've had the NIPD's MS4 permit requirements that they are now scrambling to fulfill, yeah. But yeah, we are in contact with them so that they can see that and give us feedback.
So that was one question. So I did look at Greenridge. I happen to live at the back of Greenridge.
Yeah.
So $100,000, where would that money come from?
In the plan, there's a number of different grant funding sources that we would be looking at. So depending on the specifics of that site and what we think would actually work and whether that is supported by the community, we'd be looking at probably what they call municipal vulnerability preparedness planning money that's offered by the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Protection. We could also look at Clean Water Act 319 funding. But if you go to the grant funding section of the plan, you can see I've listed a whole bunch of different funding sources that, depending on that specific site, we could tap into. Yeah.
So I'm not going to take up too much time, but having the catch basin there, that's the catch phosphates that come off the field?
Are you talking about the bioswale,
Yeah.
the current plan?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's twofold. One, to catch some of the phosphates or any sort of fertilizers, anything that would go on the field, but also to catch any sort of runoff from the actual paved parking lot and that half of the
Okay.
road that's cantered that way. So it's kind of catching everything in that general area.
Right. So one of the questions for the town is, are we looking at what we're putting on the fields in the first place to save us from having to deal with it afterwards? Just putting it out there, because obviously if you're not putting fertilizer that creates phosphates, you don't need to do that. And then the last point I noticed was, you're talking about the swale on the bottom end of where the baseball field is.
Mm.
But there, when you looked at it on the 22nd of April, you probably didn't even see there was a stream that goes into another culvert at the top end of that parking lot. And that's quite key, because come the winter, we have a lot of runoff from that mounting that goes through that stream. And sometimes it overruns the road, and it does that further up as well. If we're talking about floodwaters, we definitely need to address...
Sort of mitigate that as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't even on the plan that I could see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that might have been something that they missed when they went out and did the field study, but...
Well, because it's rather like California. They have these big places for rivers, but they're empty at the moment. But when they have a storm, they're filled with water, and that's the same with that particular culvert. I think other people
That's
notice.
funny, I didn't realize that stream, because when you come around that corner, that road's always wet up there, and I didn't know it was because of that
Well,
stream.
that's a totally different issue if you're talking about on Greenridge. We're talking on South Street.
That's what I'm talking about, South Street, just past when you're going up. I always wondered why it was so wet up through there. And that's,
Well, because there's culverts that come off the mountain, which Unfortunately, our interim supervisor will probably be able to explain more of
Yeah.
it. But I'm just noticing that Greenridge was specific to take off nitrates,
Yeah.
which, first question is, could we look at not using
Right.
nitrates? And then number two, if we're looking at that end, we should also be looking at the other end because of the flooding that goes on there when there's runoff in
Yeah.
spring.
That's-
Well, not only in the spring, but when we have really
Basically,
heavy
when you have,
weather.
rain events.
That was my comments.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Hall, and always impressed with your knowledge, and thank you for going through the detail. And Courtney, Mr. Hall is also a member of our Green Committee as well, that we're
Oh,
just
great.
reforming again, so,
Excellent.
so thank you for that. Any other questions? No? Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much, Courtney.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
You too. And number 10, the review of the COVID-19 license fee abatement policy. Mr. Hutchinson.
Yes, I looked back at the minutes of the meetings and found that when the license fees were abated, the select board was in general agreement that you all would revisit the abatement in July and see whether or not it ought to be continued. And from where I sit, which is, admittedly, I'm quite new here, it seems to me that businesses are just beginning to get back on their feet. And if this whole thing had been solved 3 or 4 months ago, we might be, much closer back to where we were before anything closed down. I think businesses are still in the process of recovering, and so I certainly would support continuing the abatement of that fee through this calendar year, if the board agreed.
Totally agree.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion, we support the license fee abatement to December 31st, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. So number 11, the proposed listening session for Mass DOT roundabout at West Housatonic and Main Street. So this is something that I asked for to be on the agenda for today, and I did send just a summary of the idea so you can kind of digest that. And then if there is anyone that thinks this is a good idea and wants to make a motion, certainly entertain that as well. So just for the record, I'll go ahead and read this proposal. So the request for the proposal is a special select board meeting in September 2021 for a select board listening session of residents regarding the topic of the Mass DOT proposed intersection improvements at routes 8 and 9, Main Street, at South Street, and West Housatonic Street. The background: Mass DOT has proposed intersection improvements for Route 8 and 9, Main Street, at South Street, and West Housatonic Street. Mass DOT proposal includes a roundabout at the intersection of Main Street and South Street. On June 4th, 2021, Mass DOT provided a link to a web page with the details of the proposal, including the following sections: the project need, why a roundabout, design alternatives, traffic management, and next steps, which include a 25% design submission and a 25% design public hearing fall/winter 2021, and then comments. The comment section included a survey, and the results from those responding as of 6/22/21 show a 26% favorability rate. This is from a public records request to Mass DOT. The number of respondents to that was 45%. The purpose of this request is a formal listening session to hear from residents regarding the Mass DOT project. Select board members will listen to the feedback and consider a formal town position based on that feedback at the following select board meeting. And the additional purpose is to increase the Dalton resident engagement on this important change for the town of Dalton. Why is the proposal important to consider? Mass DOT is not required to receive resident feedback. The 25% design public hearing will not take into account residents for or against the project, but will accept feedback on the design only. The residents of Dalton should be an active stakeholder, and feedback should be considered with a heavy weight. The listening session will help facilitate that process. The listening session proposed format includes a select board meeting, where the chair will moderate the meeting, target date early September, the time limit 90 minutes, the location either the Wacona Regional High School Auditorium or Nesicus Auditorium, open to Dalton residents only. Mass DOT will receive an invitation to the meeting as observation only. Resident comments would be limited to 2 minutes per person. Residents who are unable to attend can send letters and/or email comments to the chair. These comments will be read into the record. The meeting will be televised via Dalton Community Television. Remote participation will not be an option, and the recording secretary will record the meeting and document the record in the minutes. The proposed outcome of this activity is that at the subsequent select board meeting, the board members individually would have had time to consider the feedback and be prepared to discuss and vote on a formal position of the town of Dalton. Soon after that, a letter will be sent to Mass DOT with that position. And that's the proposal, and thank you for that time.
Mr. Chair, I think this is a great idea. The more input we can get from the residents, the better. We get a feel for how the town is feeling about this. Like I said, anytime we can get input, we should take that. And I think this is a great opportunity for the town to come out and speak their mind on it.
I would welcome the traffic commission to be invited to this, so we can get their expertise in this. I mean, we're all looking at it through, you know, they may see something or be able to explain something that we don't understand, so I totally support it, but I would like to have the traffic commission involved in it.
Any other comments?
I agree with Mr. Bishop. Inviting the traffic commission seems like a good idea. I feel like, you know, with COVID, you know, participation in the initial, this initial, you know, survey, it's, you said 45 people?
45. Yeah, the total of 95 residents looked at it,
Yeah,
and 45 responded to the survey.
okay.
Yeah.
And the survey's closed? Is it still?
Originally, they posted to June 11th, and then I checked with Mass DOT, and it's still active, it's out there, so they're still collecting data.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask for another public records request to get the updated numbers before.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
just an indication of public participation in general.
Right.
But I feel like with COVID, it's down. And the more opportunities we can create for people to provide feedback, the better. So I'm in support of this. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Hutchinson?
I think it might be useful to, at the end of the listening session, to allow DOT 5 or 10 minutes to comment on their what they've heard and things like that. I just wouldn't want someone to raise a question that could be answered and leave the impression being that there was no answer, when their DOT might have a response to that. I know one concern had been, well, if you run people through the roundabout and there's a traffic light there, you know, isn't it just gonna back up? And DOT says, oh yeah, well, we plan to have a, sensors that when it's likely to get backed up, the light goes green. So that would alleviate that pressure there. So that's a good example of something that I think, if somebody brought that up and there weren't that response, you might think that DOT hadn't considered that.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm thinking, and I wouldn't want them to try to do a point by point, you know, anything, but if they could say, you know, some points that have been raised that we actually have addressed, and we urge you to look at the plan again, or something like that. It might be nice for them to be able to express their appreciation for people being interested, and maybe say a few words.
Sure. I would agree with that. And what I'd like to do, if there's a motion to move this forward, I'd like to come back in August with kind of the wrinkles kind of ironed out in the whole proposal. So this is just kind of the first V1 of the proposal.
Okay, so,
I'll make a motion, if you want.
go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we set up a proposed listening session for Mass DOT roundabout at West Susan Main Street, set for a meeting in September, and bringing this back to the select board in August to review the ground rules and everything that we want to go with this.
I'll second that.
Motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Quite thoughtful. Transfers between funds. Mr. Hutchinson.
I am pleased to say that we have no further transfers
All
between
right.
funds. This would be the last meeting in which we could consider them, and I believe we have balanced our books for FY.
Great. Great, good news. Next one is create a new open space committee. Mr. Hutchinson.
I believe we should pass over this as well, but for a different reason. I talked with Dan Filio today, who chaired the Open Space and Recreation Plan Advisory Committee. And he feels that actually the time is not ripe yet to name a new committee because they have to get back to the state on some of the items that the state raised that the open space plan should have in it. He believes it's perfectly possible to do that, but he would like to have the original committee continue to work on that and provide feedback to the state and have the final plan approved before a committee is named to implement the plan.
Okay. Any questions? Great. The next one is the request for Dalton Road Race, August 29, 2021.
You should have something in your folders about that from the Community Recreation Association. The executive director writes to request permission to hold the 44th annual Dalton Road Race on Sunday, August 29th, 2021. Again, having two races, a 10K race and a 5K race or walk, beginning at 9 a.m. at Nessicus Middle School. She goes on to give the course route and has said that she's also requested officers from the Dalton Police Department and sent a letter to the Dalton Fire Department and to Mass Highway. She would like the Select Board support in this annual benefit.
Is there a motion?
Yes. I'll make a motion to support the CRA 44th Annual Dalton Road Race on Sunday, August 29th, 2021.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? The, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. And thank you to the CRA for coordinating this fun race. So it's always a great event. 44th annual Dalton Road Race. Mark, we signing you up again?
Don't challenge me. I'm thinking about it.
You're gonna do the 10K, right?
Yeah.
Can I drive?
Let's start slow. Let's go with the 5K.
Here you go. The next one is the request for the BHS Bloodmobile at Town Hall, August 31st, 2021. Mr. Hutchinson.
Here, another note from our health agent who is supporting this. BHS has the goal to do a blood drive in front of each town hall in the county this summer. Normally they park outside of the CRA. They're just asking to park a couple hundred feet up on Main Street to be at Town Hall. And the Board of Health wanted to be, or the health agent wanted to be sure that any concerns around library parking availability are considered before we give a hard commitment. The CRA has been contacted, and this would be the natural next date in their Bloodmobile series, so that would be a good time to do it. I just need to check in with the library and see if they think that would be problematic for their business on that day.
Could they set it up in this parking lot right over here that's not being used?
Maybe. I think their point may be to get pictures
Okay.
of the Bloodmobile in Town Hall, and the parking lot would be fine for that. So that's a good alternate one. Or maybe people who are going to the library park in that parking lot. So
Either way, yeah.
I'll get in touch with the library director and see what his suggestions are about that.
So we have a motion of support pending the next steps?
Yeah.
Okay.
Make a motion, we support having the Bloodmobile on August 31st at the Town Hall.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Next item is the town manager update.
Thank you. As a reminder, between this meeting and our past meeting, there was a special town meeting. in which various capital and other items were funded, including a major borrowing for renovation of the town hall, which will include asbestos abatement, requiring the temporary relocation of second-floor offices. I will work closely with the building superintendent to ensure that the project runs smoothly. Just after lunch on July 1st, staff gave a surprise retirement party for Judy Wagner, presenting her with a card and a cake and a fine bouquet. We got a very nice thank you note from Kathy Burke regarding her certificate. She wrote, "To the Select Board, thank you so much for the very special certificate. It was my honor to serve on the Housing Authority. Elderly people have always been my favorites, and now I am one." The note goes on, and I urge you to read it in the Select Board room. There had been some concern over a proposal from Berkshire Money Management to offer outdoor events, concerts this summer, as their current use is already subject to a special permit without the added entertainment function. However, they have decided to withdraw their proposal, at least for this year. That from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Coincident with retirements and resignations, last Tuesday we welcomed Alyssa Machino as my new assistant. Alyssa has jumped in with both feet forward and is doing a great job. I'm also pleased to say this is Grant McGregor's first day on the job as our new town planner.
He just took out.
I think he left after the planning items.
Right.
Traveling back to West Hartford. He was successfully brought on board and is settling in the town planner's office. I've given him a list of projects and grants to become familiar with and hope he can take on that work soon so I can focus as much as possible on the town hall renovation, including the temporary relocation. Of course, we're about to hire a new highway superintendent as well, so it's been a very busy 3 weeks for me with all the interview preparation, interviewing, and related work. Regarding the proposed solar project on the Walker property, an internal group met and came to a consensus on what the town needs in order to approve the project. Town council, specifically Rick Holland, is now communicating those requirements with Emma Azadan of Citizens Energy Corporation, who's representing the landowner. Recently we got some feedback and are revising our spreadsheet, which our new assessor, Harold Scheid from Rural Resource Group, has drawn up for us, which shows that both the landowner and the town can benefit according to the assumptions we've made, and we're going to see whether or not Citizen believes that they're possible as well. In other solar news, we got the $2,500 check from Nexamp they were supposed to have sent several months ago at the signing of the pilot agreement. They expect to start generating energy soon, and we all hope the state approves the new tranche of renewable energy credits. And finally, the cherry sheets from the Legislative Conference Committee are out and are unchanged from the Senate version, with $1.6 million roughly in receipts and $51,000 in charges for a net receipt of $1,622,656. And that's all from me.
Great. Any questions? Another wonderful update as always. So, good work. The next one, future agenda items.
I have a question, it may go under updates, and Mr. Chair, you might be able to answer this. How are we looking for the crosswalks, crosslights?
Great question. Last update I heard was that equipment was in and just planning and scheduling. I saw some activity there a couple of days ago, but I'm not sure what the next steps are. But Mr. Hutchinson, do you have any other updates on it? You're talking about the River Street and Depot, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be full steam ahead and wrapping up pretty quickly. I am not aware of the particular progress, exactly where they are in that. But I do know that they received the material that they needed and should be ready to finish very quickly. I'll also note that something I should have noted in my update, I did finally send a letter to River Run noting that we have found documentary evidence that River Run Road is and always has been private. The town rejected it and accepting it in 1960, and it's noted on a 1985 plan as being a private way. That plan does not include the extension with the 3 residential houses in it that are not part of that development. But the town does not list that as a public road either, and those houses are relatively old. I believe they're 1880s or so. And the feeling is that they were built for people who were working at the mill when that was a mill. So that was put in as a private road and has been maintained that way since then. We can still talk about a policy of how to deal with town maintenance of private roads. But I would again just make the point that any policy we come up with should be fair to all, and we should have the same policy for all private roads.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay, future agenda items? Going once, going twice? Hearing none, okay. Any items not anticipated 48 hours before the meeting? Mr. Hutchinson? No? I have none. Any remarks for the select board? Anyone? No? I just have one remark. Ms. Hutchinson, since you arrived, our annual town meeting was like 45 minutes. The special town meeting was 30. We're running through this within 45 minutes. This is kind of like setting a new thing for us.
That's
so.
right, this is the bar.
Yeah, this is a good thing, so,
I wish I could take credit.
yeah. No, it's all good. We get through a lot of good data. No announcements listed on the agenda, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, motion passes.